Welcome to the Happily Different podcast, where we unpack the interesting and unorthodox ways people approach their businesses and their lives. The mission of this show is to learn as much as we can from people who weren't afraid to go their own way. My name is Ryan Jaskowitz, and I'm your host, as well as CEO of 12.5 Capital, a non-bank financing helping companies accelerate the progress they are trying to make in their businesses and in their lives. Today's guest is the founder and CEO of KDM Engineering, a professional engineering firm focusing on power distribution design, gas distribution, and telecommunications design based out of Chicago, with offices in Baltimore and Philadelphia. Prior to founding KDM, she played D1 basketball at Northern Illinois University, where she earned a degree in electrical engineering. She is also the founder of Calculated Genius, which I'm excited to dive into later in the show, which is a nonprofit whose mission is to inspire underrepresented youth in engineering. Kimberly Moore, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, full disclosure for everybody that listens to this show, KDM was one of my first clients at 12.5 and easily our biggest success story. So I know a good bit about Kim from a business standpoint, but I'm looking forward to learning what shaped you personally. So first off, I love to do a little research on people. And, while I'm not researching celebrities, so there's not a ton of information on the web, I found out that you often make a pilgrimage to Las Vegas to play in the World Series of Poker. I didn't know that about you. When did that begin? Let's unpack that a little bit.
Oh, absolutely. So it started, I learned how to play poker in an actual casino. I didn't learn during the online craze, but I used to make a daily trip to the casino in Aurora, and this old guy, he saw that I was there every single day. I wouldn't go on weekends because weekends were like where they take the money of suckers, right? People's paychecks. And I wasn't really trying to be that person. So I was there every day, Monday through Thursday. And this old guy just walked up to me, and they called him Dr. Duck. And he said, "Hey, you're doing this all wrong. I'll train you. I'll teach you. I'll coach you. But you have to do these things." And he told me I had to get a journal. I had to list what game I played, how my buy-in was, and how many hours I played, and what I left with. And when I busted out of my one buy-in, that was it. I could not buy back in. That was it. But, write down any controversial hands that he wanted to talk, that I might want to talk to him about. So that was like poker coaching before poker coaching was really a thing. And I did that for a year. And after a year with him, I had made like 54 grand on the side.
Holy cow.
Just playing cash games.
What year is this?
No tournaments. This was 2007.
How old are you? Ish.
Probably barely able to get in there.
Oh, really? Really? So 54 grand at that age.
So I was probably like 24 or something like that. 25.
Wow. Holy cow.
And
that's real money back then. Yeah.
It was real money. Yeah, I was like 24, 25. And so I was like, and that was outside of my full-time job, right? So I was like, oh yeah, this is it. And then I'm telling you, the worst thing ever that I could have done was take all that knowledge, go to a tournament, and be successful at the tournament.
Oh, yeah.
I paid $65 to get into a tournament, the Heartland Poker Tour, and I came out with like 18 grand. Like shy away from the final table. Like $65 to 18 grand. Mm-hmm. I stopped going to coaching. I thought I knew everything.
Yeah.
Lots of life lessons in that story there.
There's a ton of life lessons. Ton of life lessons there. I'm pulling out. So first off, you were doing the topic of decision journals. I love decision journal, the idea behind a decision journal or any journal in general, but the decision journal of here's the decision I needed to make, which was for you, it was what buy-in did I want, or what hand was I playing? So here was the decision. Here's how long I played. So a decision journal typically will ask, are you tired? Were you hungry at the time? Were you angry with somebody else at the time? Because you're trying to figure out what was your emotions like. So writing down how long you played tells how tired you were, or like where your mental state was, and then being able to go back and go, okay, with the knowledge I had, would I have done anything different? And was luck on my side, or was a good decision process on my side? One of my favorite books over the past couple of years is actually from that poker player, Annie Duke. She talks about decisioning and decision making. And she talks about that, exactly what you're talking about, the idea of writing in a journal to know what decision I was making and why, so that I can go back and look at it. Because, there's a million different outcomes that just poker is perfect example of that. Like, you can have the correct decision-making process, and there's all these different outcomes that can happen. And that's such a life lesson, I think, that you probably learned for business. And then the idea of coaching too, it is such a funny thing. Like, in business, we start having some success, and we're like, well, we got to figure it out. This is it. And it's very quick that we realize even the highest level executives, or just push it tangentially to sports, there's still coaches in every sport, every individual sport. I'm big into running, and all of these professional runners have coaches. If it was that easy and you didn't need coaching, they would just do it on their own. LeBron James wouldn't need a coach. Maybe he doesn't, but we all have coaching. So there's a lot of life lessons that come out of that for sure. Cool. Well, thanks for sharing a little bit about that. Grew up on South Side of Chicago, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
How did that?
South Side of Chicago.
How did that? I was going to say, how did that shape you? What life lessons came out of that? I mean, we could do probably 2 hours on just that, I bet.
I was going to say that's a whole different podcast, but no, it was great. I mean, I can't say anything negative, because if I did not go through anything that I had gone through, I wouldn't be where I am. So grateful for everything that has, that I've gone through, and everything that we've grown up with, because that has definitely shaped me for now. But I mean, I had a good time. I didn't know, back then, I didn't know I didn't have any money. I didn't. I didn't know that we were in the state that we were in. Did not know.
Yeah.
For a little bit, didn't care, when you're a little kid, but I mean, just didn't know.
Yeah.
And so I was just, grateful that my parents continue to let us be youth, as long as we could, and inspired us to take on whatever we wanted to take on. My dad was, I was a bowler before I was a basketball player.
Okay. Interesting.
They didn't have bowling scholarships. So I chose basketball for the scholarship. And, but, they let us do whatever we wanted in terms of, schooling, in terms of sport. They didn't say, no, you're going to do, this, we
they let you try a lot.
Let us try a lot. Right. They did steer us to bowling because they were both professional bowlers. So I have pictures of me in a crib with a full set of bowling balls and pins.
Wait, your parents were professional bowlers?
My dad was a professional. My mom played on the circuit. My dad was a professional bowler. I have his rings. And,
oh my gosh!
Trophies. It's crazy.
Well, my next question was, what did your parents do for a living when you were growing up? Was that his only thing he did?
No. He worked for the Chicago Transit Authority, and my mom worked for the local union for the Chicago Transit Authority. So they both, in essence, worked for CTA. But my dad, before that, traveled for bowling. And my mom also, she did bowling, but it just wasn't as professional as he was.
Right. That's fun. So you come from a bowling family. I'm not going to bowl with you. I bowled with my wife and kids last weekend, and she trounced me. I mean, she just absolutely demolished me, my wife. I was like, what the hell is going on here? I thought I was the better bowler. Yeah. So I'm not bowling with you at all. We're not going to play that game. Certainly not for money.
I'm just not getting into it. Yeah, well, hold
You
on.
getting back into
But
it?
I mean, I don't do it as much as I used to, because time. But I do want to. And then on top of that, bowling houses aren't as prevalent as they used to be. Especially on the south side of Chicago, you couldn't go anywhere without seeing a bowling alley, but they've torn them all
Really?
down. So the only ones you can really get are the ones that are like for fun, which are like the ones downtown, or like the one above the house by House of Blues, like those that are like not really meant for real sport. The one at the rollerball place, not really meant for real sport, So that's what you can find in the city. Otherwise, you have to go out to the burbs and try to get, real, or hillside and try to get real lanes.
Yeah, there's a place out by me here. I'm actually kind of by Hillside. I wonder if you're talking about the same place that I'm talking about, but it's right near my house here, and it looks pretty dodgy from the outside. So you got to know what you're getting yourself into when you walk into a place like that. I think the reason those other places are popular is because from the outside they look like, oh, okay, very welcoming. Most bowling alleys, the true traditional old ones, they're like, all right, really dark inside, no windows. What am I walking into here? So, dad worked for CTA, mom worked for the union at the CTA, grew up on the South Side. Both parents sound like they were really influential in your life, like very present, very, wanting to see you succeed. Am I hearing that correctly?
Absolutely. Yep. No, I was going to say they both worked hard, and my grandmother was there, my mom's mom. So we basically lived in a 2-flat on the south side. We lived upstairs. My grandma lived on the first floor. So to me, it wasn't an apartment. It was a whole house because my grandma owned the whole 2-flat. So she would be downstairs where we would be. The basement was everybody's. The backyard was everybody's. So, and then you knew all your neighbors. So, everybody was inclusive in the household, and they all had a hand in discipline as well.
Yeah. Well, discipline, but also I would imagine in the love and the growth of the child, which we see less and less of nowadays, I think, where people are so separated. We're supposedly so connected now as a society with social media, but I think we're more disconnected than ever, truthfully. When you talk about something like that, I hearken to my wife, who lived, basically 3 doors down from her grandmother for her entire life, and every day was at her grandmother. Whereas I'm the opposite, where I lived 6 hours from my grandparents. So I saw them 2 or 3 times a year, which I'm not making a moral judgment of good or bad on that. I'm just saying there is some benefit to having, they say it takes a village, right? And so you look at the success of somebody like you, who, like, let's make no bones about it, it's tough coming out of the south side of Chicago. So like something happened where you were able to make a jump that somebody else wasn't able to make a jump. And there's got to be some sort of levers that are pulled to be able to do that. And clearly, family and a present set of parents and grandparents seems to be one of the ingredients in the big stew that allows somebody to make that success in life. Certainly it's you as well, but there is the people impacting you, right?
Absolutely. And like you said, it's one of the ingredients. I know people who had full sets of parents, grandparents, cousins on the block, still didn't really make anything of themselves. And I know people who had, no parents and had just a grandparent and came out and is doing better than me right now, So there's a lot of ingredients. Right. No one can pinpoint to just one, but I am very thankful for the combo of both my parents and my grandmother there to keep me out of trouble.
Yeah, for sure. Was it fun living with your grandma like that? I just don't know the experience, so I'm just curious.
It was. So, I mean, again, you have working parents, and it's almost like, what would you, almost today, right? Like people have nannies and all these other situations now that are, maybe a little more common, or maybe more common to me than I'm noticing. But there were no nannies, especially for us. Right. So my mom's at work, my dad's at work. And if I wasn't going to one of their jobs, I used to ride the bus. That's how I learned the city of Chicago.
Oh, really?
Because my dad used to let me. It was obviously safer a little bit, probably back then. But and I'm not that old, y'all. So don't. When I say back then, I don't mean like the freaking 60s, 70s. You know,
I'm talking you and I are getting there. You and I are getting there, though.
But you like in the like in the 90s, when my dad was driving the bus, I would sit in the seat right behind the bus driver, and he would drive the same routes. And that's when people knew the bus driver, because they would be there all the same routes, like all the time. And that's your daughter, Jeff. You know, right. This is Kim. This is whatever. And I would just sit there, but he drove different routes. And his house was 79th and Vincennes, and sometimes he would drive the north side. And that's how I'm able to maneuver on the north side with all those tri-corners and everything else, because my dad drove those, those blocks. So, if I wasn't with him or at my mom's office, that's how I learned downtown, because my mom worked at the Union, and she was on Jackson and Wabash and I would take the bus to her. So I'm learning how to get across all the areas of Chicago. And when I wasn't doing that, and before I was old enough to do some of that stuff, I was with my grandmother downstairs because they were both at work.
Yeah.
So my grandmother made sure we had lunch. That's grandmother made sure we had our homework done, that my brother and I weren't fighting. We did that a lot. And, that we were on the stoop by 8:00 when the lights came on outside. If we were in the alley playing basketball, she would be in the backyard just making sure that we're okay. So, like you said, it does take a village. And my grandmother was huge in that village.
It sounds like, and I think about this for myself as well. Like you always try to, like we said, there's a lot of ingredients to life in general, just the soup of life. And it sounds like you had somebody waiting for you at all times. Like you were going back to something. Do you know what I mean? Like I always feel like there's this ability to know I have a family, or I have somebody I can go back to, that somebody's waiting for me. There's somebody wanting me back home. And I think that's such an important aspect here. The other thing I pull from that story is something that I love. One of my, I can't remember if there was a mentor or somebody I just heard say it, and I've adopted it for my 3 kids, is just bring your kids along. You know what I mean? Like, it's that your dad brought you along on his routes. Your mom brought you to the office just to hang out. Like the idea of just bringing them along and exposing them to things, like, it's far easier to say like, hey, I'm going to go on my own, because it is easier. Just if I go on my own, I do my own thing, come back, I can play with them when I get home. But bringing at least 1 or 2 of them along and going, hey, I'm going to do this thing, and I think people get so caught up in the business world and like, oh, I can't bring my kids along and I think we're just not exposing them to enough things, we're kind of siloing them. So I think it's pretty cool that your parents did that, even that far back in time, right?
Absolutely. I mean, again, if it wasn't for, my dad bringing me along, I probably wouldn't have exposure to certain areas of the city, or know that, certain areas were there. If my mom hadn't brought me downtown, I wouldn't know how to maneuver downtown. And it was full circle when I was looking for my next office space before I landed at 35 Wacker. They brought me to the building that my mom used to work in, because the Union is no longer, I don't know if they are in that building, but awesome. There was like a couple floors, and they were like, you can have this, these areas. And I was like, you gotta be kidding me, y'all. I used to be in this building all the time, and so, I mean, you never know what the result of the action that you take is going to be in the future for your child or your cousins or your brothers and your sisters or whatever it is. You never know. Like, we can't tell the future, right? So my mom didn't know I was going to have this company and be downtown. She wasn't saying, oh, I need to take you downtown because one day when you become president of a company, you're going to need to know how to be downtown.
Yeah. So. I bet that was, and this is not a shot. This is not a shot in any ways, but I bet that was far from her mind. The idea that you were going to be the founder and CEO of a company, like in that day, that was far from her mind. She was just being a mom. Your dad was just being a dad and bringing you along, saying, I like being around this kid. I want to bring this kid around and, cut to today where you've been exposed to all these things. And I think that's an important thing you just pointed out, which was the idea that, I didn't grow up on the south side of Chicago. So I was exposed to a lot of things just naturally being a white man in the suburbs of Chicago, right? Like I had opportunities, right? But like the ability to see the lakefront, the ability to see the different areas of Chicago and be exposed and go, oh, that exists.
Yep.
And there's people like me and I want to be there. That exposure doesn't happen for everybody. I think that's assumed. And I think there's a nonprofit in Chicago that literally all their goal to do is to take kids from the south and west sides, take them to the lake or take them to the museum.
Areas. Absolutely.
Or it has nothing to do with different areas, just to say this exists, just so you know.
Yep. And looking back again, I think that it was helpful because by me doing this and seeing this, I saw more of a diverse people downtown, and I never felt like anything was off limits. Matter of fact, I got more goals and aspirations from being downtown and being able to walk around while my mom was, I finished my homework. Like, all right, mom, walking around. She's like, oh, okay, I have to leave by 5:00. Okay, cool. But having that exposure, being able to walk around and see places and go in places, I never felt like maybe some of the kids do today, which is, downtown is so off limits, right? So whenever anything happens and it gets warm outside, I got to book it downtown. Like I wasn't like that because I already had that exposure from a young age. Yeah. This is downtown. This is the lake. This is Lincoln Park. This is DePaul. This is, whatever it is. This is Wicker Park. It really wasn't good
I'm comfortable
Wicker Park
with
at
it.
the time.
I already know these areas.
But I'm comfortable with it. So, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good point. I didn't think about it.
Cool. You talked about your siblings. How many? Just the one brother?
Yep.
One brother. And older, younger?
Younger. 2 years younger.
Younger. 2 years younger. And you said there was a lot of fighting there?
Yeah.
In a fun way.
Yes, in a fun way.
In a fun way.
It was us battling each other until I literally went away to college. He was 5'8", 5'9", maybe. I'm 6 feet, Okay. So I'm like, hey, go away. And
pound on
it. I go to college and I come back after the first semester, and this man is 6'3". He is now 6. I think he's now either 6'5" or 6'6", but he had grown to like 6'3".
Holy cow!
And I was just like,
"What happened?"
Yeah. There was no little, hey, let me beat you up when I come home. Now he's picking me up, Yeah. I'm like,
yeah.
What's going on?
I'll show you what's up. That's what he was saying.
Yeah, exactly.
Payback time. Cool. Well, there's a lot of stories of entrepreneurship and, kind of with the benefit of hindsight as you sit today. And it's hard to know this, but what was the moment you realized, not necessarily you're going to start KDM, but the moment you realized you were going to do your own thing?
I had always done my own thing and found a way to make money doing something, and even when, I was younger in elementary school and part of high school, I called my mom a pimp. She would pimp me out because if like any of my aunties or my grandma's friends needed drywall hung or like blinds and shutters put up, I was Miss Fix It in the house. So like if something broke in the house, I would fix it. So really? she would send me to these old people's houses to do things, and they would say, "Oh my God, it's so thank you so much," and give my mom money. And I'm watching the exchange. I'm like,
you're like, can I? What's my portion of this? It should be all of it. She's like, no, I marketed you. I get a piece. I get a cut.
Yeah. So,
That's
but
hilarious.
even
That's
coming
funny.
out of in school, I mean, it was everything. I mean, I found a hustle in a lot of things. I started many businesses.
Yeah.
None of them really kept my attention. I started all kinds of things. I mean, literally everything.
Yeah.
Soldering cars, welding cars. Sorry, soldering circuit boards,
Yeah.
building computers. I mean,
Yeah.
everything. So
Everything.
that's
Yeah.
how I knew I was going to have a business. I just didn't know what I was going to land on. So,
Yeah. I think we're simpatico in that way. Like I feel like that was my life as well, which was just like trying everything. And again, that comes from parents who allowed me to try everything, right? Same as you. But also like it wasn't this trigger that went off in my head ever. It was just like always going to be that way. It wasn't something consciously, but I like to ask that question because I don't want people to think that the only way to entrepreneurship is you're born with this gene that makes you want to do these things. And I don't think that's the case, especially I've only recorded like I said, we're in the early stages of this podcast, and I've at least had 2 or 3 others. When I ask that same question, they say, oh, it was this specific moment as an adult, or this thing happened in my life and I decided I was going to be like this going forward. Whereas I think most people assume it's like your story and my story, which is it was just sort of the natural thing. And I just want to make sure that people understand it goes both ways. Don't you agree?
Yes. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So so just shifting a little bit. So obviously you grew up your whole life knowing you were going to kind of do your own thing without actually knowing you're just doing your own thing. Right. And I get that too. So, as we shift to talking about KDM Engineering, I would love to, unpack the whole company, how it got started, all that kind of stuff. So, but for the benefit of our listeners, can you just give a brief understanding of what KDM Engineering does in a way that maybe they would understand?
Absolutely. In layman's terms. So basically what KDM Engineering does is we work for the power utilities, helping provide the services that enable you to open your refrigerator door and see the light on. To be able to flip the light switch in the morning before you go brush your teeth and you're like, oh, I gotta go to work, flip the light switch and boom, there's electricity, So, whenever there's new residential, developments or subdivisions or, new Amazon warehouses, new Facebook data centers, whatever it is, it requires power. And that's what the utilities come to us to ask for our design services to do. And then with the telecom companies, everybody knows about 5G, whether you like it or not, whether you are like, oh, this is like microwave in my brain, or if you're like, oh, bring it on, I want smart cities. Either way, what it is. So we are designing for them as well to help enable the future of smart cities, autonomous vehicles, and things like that. So that's basically what we do in a nutshell.
Cool. So just unpacking that a little bit, you're designing. So if I'm Facebook and I'm opening a data center in Aurora, Illinois, that is on land that has not had power ran to it yet. Maybe it was an old farm. The utility is coming to KDM and saying, here's where the building's going to be. Here's where our power currently is. I need to design a plan to get it to that building. That's what you guys are designing?
Correct. So they'll look at their system internally. Sometimes they ask us, or another engineering firm, but they'll say, hey, we know where we have facilities, and we know how much power those facilities actually have. Either we need more power or we just need redundant power, and we need a design to get that power, however it gets there.
Right.
Whether it be on poles or whether it be underground, we just got to get the power to the customer safely, cleanly, with as less exposure to the elements, as possible.
And just
making sure that it's all safe.
You you told me a story once, or I think it was a contract you had at one point with ComEd maybe, but it was mapping the electrical grid in Chicago, right? Mm-hmm. Because for those that, don't read about renewable energy, which I'm not sure how you could not read about it, because it's always a fight between two people all the time. But set that aside. Our grid system in Illinois for sure, but United States as a whole is a grid system that is a bunch of like dirt roads that, one person built this dirt road, then another one paved a road, and then there's a rock road coming this way. There's no uniformity to it. Do I remember that correctly, that at one point you guys were tasked with just mapping that out because the utility didn't even know where everything went?
So we were mapping the electrical part of the grid. So the grid is two parts. There's an infrastructure grid for like all the cities, and then there's an electrical grid. So we were mapping the electrical grid to see where all of their facilities go and cross and don't go and everything else, because it's one thing to say that we can power up the entire northern part of Illinois because Ameren is southern. But there's another part of saying, okay, we power it all. We just don't power you, we haven't gotten to you yet. So it's, just being able to make sure that what is out there is accurately reflected in the maps that result in designs for new builds. Like you can't build anything on some old maps from the 40s and 50s that might not even be there anymore, So this is no longer a dirt road, or like Aurora or sometimes Naperville. They don't have a lot of poles in certain areas. They prefer beautification, right? So they put everything underground.
Right. Underground.
So if our maps all say that we still have all these overhead facilities and we don't, somebody has to make those efforts to accurately reflect that.
Yeah. Right. And while putting it underground is both beautification as well as reduces the chance of a tree falling on it, it also probably makes it harder to map, find and map, because you can't just go, oh, there's a pole there, and a line connecting them, So I'm sure you get plenty of business for that. So I'd love to start from the beginning though. When did it start? Talk us through, like, what year was that you first started thinking about KDM Engineering? I knew you were out of school. I think I knew maybe you worked for a nuclear plant at that point. Is that right?
Excellent. Yep. I worked
for you passed the nuclear.
Yep. Sure.
Excellent.
Did.
That's right. Okay.
So I worked there and then went to distribution, did more ComEd work, which is the distribution side, skipped over that whole little middle piece. And basically working for one of their consultants, I built up their energy kind of like department from like myself and 2 college grads all the way up to, a major department making with a contract of 15 million, right? From 0 to 15.
Wow.
And I decided that, I can pretty much do this for myself. The person that was ahead of me that brought me over was very close in age to me, only probably like maybe 3 or 4 years older, maybe 5 years older. And that was my ceiling. Like that was what I saw as my ceiling. And there was nowhere I could go if she was going to be there. And she was going to be there, So at that point, I decided to make the jump in 2009. But we all know what else happened in 2009 with the recession. I was just unfamiliar being in my 20s and never having to go through one of these before, what that was, and it was an experience. And then if you wanted to, just for dramatic appeal, right? Then my dad got sick. So then I had to, go to Indianapolis where my dad was currently living and take care of him from 2009 to Memorial, actually this coming weekend, 2011. And that's when he passed. And when he passed Memorial weekend, 2011, I was able to come back. But at that point, I didn't have anything to come back to because I had
Right.
I put everything. I mean, I was always a huge like saver. So I always maxed out 401ks. I don't need that much. I always looked at ways to have additional revenue, ways to save extra money and put it in CDs that gave me the biggest bang for the buck. I mean, we're talking about CDs in 2007, 8, 9. You're probably getting like 10, 12%, as opposed to 0.012%.
Big money back then.
Yeah. So, so I mean, I pretty much drained I had a house in DeKalb because I was working, but I pretty much had to short sell at that time during the housing bust, short sell the house, file bankruptcy to get the remaining balance of the short sell off of my credit, and then start the business. And I mean, later you find things out later. I mean, I found out that was a predatory practice. They couldn't have, threatened me and said, "Hey, you short sold," and at the time we're going to come after you. I didn't have to file bankruptcy.
Yeah.
I didn't know that because I was the first person in my house to buy a house. My grandma bought that house.
Yeah, right.
Back in the, but my mom never bought a house. My dad never bought a house. Like he was given houses from his mom.
Right.
So, I didn't have anybody to talk to.
No one to guide you there.
Yeah. So, filed bankruptcy to get that off of my back. But the bankruptcy, as you remember, was the big hindrance in me trying to get funding when I came back home to try and start my business again. So in 2011, my dad died. In 2012, I do have other siblings on my dad's side. I'm just not really familiar with all of them. So, but I was familiar with my older brother, and he died in 2012. And my grandma died Christmas of 2013. So at this point, right?
Oh my gosh!
I'm like,
boom, boom, boom.
Man, I was like, I'm looking up at the sky. I'm like, Lord, I don't know what this is. I don't want it. Please,
no more.
Yeah, no more. Like I'm tapped out. Flags on the play.
Yeah.
I'm done.
That's good. Yeah.
So in 2014, so I came back in 2011, right? And then I moved in with my mom in the same house that I grew up in, by the way. So now I'm in this little kitty room with my old dresser and my old desk. And I'm like, this cannot be the rest of my life. I promise you this is.
I'm sure that felt great. I'm sure that felt awesome. That was a great feeling, wasn't it?
It was wonderful. And my mom, Rochelle, all of a sudden, she's like, where are you going? I'm like, hey, I am 32. Do not. Do not do this. But so I'm in there, and then, before I was helping her take care of my grandma before my grandma passed. And, I made each one of them promises that I would be okay. Right. So I told my dad, hey, you don't have to stay here for me. If you're in pain, I'll be okay. I will always be okay. And I tell everybody that I will always be okay.
Yeah.
Same thing to my brother. Right. Same thing to my grandma. Hey, we're good. We're going to always be good. You don't have to be here for that. I'll be good. So because I had made those promises, I was like, I can't stop now because I just told them I was going to keep going. I don't want them coming back down here and haunting me and saying, hey, I thought you were going to keep going. So, So 2014, I kept going. 2014, we got our first major contract, and that was with ComEd. And we haven't really looked back until COVID. Yep.
Okay. Yeah. I'm interested to hear more about the COVID analysis there. So obviously that big fork in the road, having people, critical people in your life pass away. I mean, that's a big fork in the road, and people could go one of two ways, or one of many ways. I shouldn't say one of two ways. Like one way is to go, well, like the world's down on me. What am I going to do? I'm just going to figure something out. And then the other way is, okay, that's done. Now I'm going to move forward because I told these people I was going to be okay. And that seems to be a theme of your life of like, all right, keep moving forward. And I think that's such a crucial thing that not enough people understand, that it's not some sort of dramatic decision or dramatic transformation. It's literally one step in front of the other, deciding just to take one step in front of the other. Again, I'm trying to demystify this idea of entrepreneurship or moving on or having success. And it's literally just step after step. And then, there's a roadblock, and then most people, unfortunately, hit the roadblock and they go, okay, that's it for me. But I think a lot of people, if they just took one more step, they're like, oh, I'm past the roadblock. Great. This is great. So, sorry you had to go through all that, but it sounds like it's shaped you, you kind of take what life gives you and make the best of it. Right.
Absolutely.
Right. And that's attitude too. That's a choice. That's a decision. You could take a much different approach towards that. So, well, you just mentioned it, but I'm sure the anniversary of that this weekend is never fun. So good luck with all of that. Hopefully you celebrate them.
I do. I celebrate them,
this weekend.
I don't. There are a couple of things I don't do. I don't really like weddings too much, but I definitely don't do funerals. Right. So I almost didn't do the funeral. Like I had to put it all together, and I was going to be outside. You guys do the grieving. I've been here the whole time. I don't need this process. Like I'm through with this process. I've made peace with myself.
Yeah.
I've done all I can do. You people are the ones that need to go in there and cry because you didn't go say bye to him before whatever. Right. So,
Right.
I don't drive down to Indy very often to, go do that because I just don't. I mean, I understand paying the respects, and I will never say that's not a good thing to do. I just don't think that, he's there. I think he's wherever I am, so I don't feel like I need to, make the 3-hour drive to Indianapolis and, go to the actual plot and be like, hey, Dad, I feel like I can just say, hey, Dad, whenever I want to. And, he's there.
That might be a controversial thing, but I feel the same way. Like I told my kids and my wife, I'm like, don't put me, with a coffin in the ground or cause I'm not there. Hopefully I'm carried with you somehow. I don't expect you to come stare at a piece of stone to remember me. I hope that my impact on your life was large enough that you remember me all the time.
Yeah.
This idea that I have to go stare at a piece of stone to remember the good times, I hope that's not the case for me.
It might be controversial. That's just how I feel. I keep telling everybody around me, listen, cremate me. Okay. I don't want no funeral.
Exactly.
I want a party.
Bingo.
I don't.
Yep.
Why go into debt because
My wife
of
and
this?
kids say I'm more. My wife and kids say I'm morbid because I talk about my death a lot. I talk about what I want beyond, as though I have any say or impact on that at all. But I talk about it a lot, and I talk about how I would like to, obviously cremate me, but a month from now, now, hopefully, God, a month from whenever I pass, then have a celebration, have fun, get through your grieving if there's any. I'm sure there won't be any because, whatever, for only a few people probably, but have a party, bring me along, pour a whiskey and call it a day. So, all right, moving on to less morbid topics, even though I could talk about it all day. What is it about engineering like this that you love? Clearly you grew up as a kid fixing stuff, big surprise that you became an engineer, right? But what is it about right now? What is it about it that you love?
From which perspective? Because I can talk about the actual engineering work or the actual president side. So I know we have limited time.
Let's start the engineering side. Okay. I'm curious on the engineering side.
On the engineering side,
what drew you to that and what you love about that?
I love the fact that we make changes, and I love the fact that we can change the world literally through engineering. You can, Elon is not the one out there really building and coming up with the code for SpaceX. He might own it, but he's hired the best engineers to do that, bringing it back to infrastructure. We want bridges that don't shake, that you don't feel like you're going to fall through when you drive over them. You want the Teslas and all the new EVs that are out here. How are they going to get charged. You have to have power to them. The grid has to be able to sustain it.
Yeah.
We talk about net zero emissions. Don't think we're going to get to net zero, but we can get close. We can strive for that. But how do you do that? You need engineers to help with renewables, because even renewables, even though it doesn't put out emissions while it's generated, it put out emissions while it was being built. So how do you figure out? And then at the end of life, it's being put in the landfill. So, it's trying to figure out engineering problems to solve, or engineering ways to solve those problems. So that's what I'm excited about. I'm excited about that we're going to see more, change and more technology and more of that between now and the next couple years that we have in the past 50.
Right. And I think it's interesting because it's got to be fun to be able to go, there's that building over there that doesn't exist with power unless I designed it or my company designed it. I love that you're able to point to things. I'm sure that's got to be really fulfilling.
Yeah.
We finance a lot of companies. Most of them, I shouldn't say most of them, a lot of them are service based. So you can't point to anything. But the other day I was in Costco, and one of our clients sells a beverage in Costco, and I stumbled upon my client's the product, and I was like, this doesn't exist unless I helped finance it, which was a really fun way to think about it. So yeah, it's that's got to be, from an engineering perspective, a very fulfilling thing to go, okay, I'm helping to transform, take away just the designing of what you're doing right now, but the idea of moving towards renewable energy, which is, I think, obviously a crucial thing we have to do. And we have I think what people gets lost on most humans is we have the ways to generate the power. It's getting the power to the different places. And that's where you guys are working on the backbone of that stuff, right? Transmission lines and all that stuff is kind of where your wheelhouse is. Is that where your focus is kind of heading over the next many years?
Yeah, definitely going into more of the renewables, but it still has to be distributed. So our niche is going to be the distribution, and that's where we play a little bit of the substation. But yeah, definitely the renewables and the generating of the power from the renewable standpoint.
Cool. Well, now you've grown quite a bit. I've known you since it was just you and maybe one other person, basically from no revenue to, I don't even know what your numbers are now. Not that you have to share them, but you've grown from a revenue and people standpoint. How many people are on your team now, and what has your approach been towards hiring lately, given the challenging employee market?
Absolutely. We have grown as high as 130, 135 people. We did slip back under 100 during the COVID and the great reshifting of personnel, and then, quitting and going to other places or leaving the industries in totality, trying something new. But we're back to over 100. And our approach has been a little different than most. I just don't want bodies. I want bodies that actually fill the values that we have on our site that we showcase. Our interview questions are kind of tailored to those core values. And then, we have done things internally that cost us a lot of money in terms of overhead that, I can't do anything with, but I think are, in essence, keys to, letting people know that we care about them outside of work as well as their mental health. And we brought on a corporate coach, she's like a life coach.
Nice.
And she's on staff. It's not like you call Blue Cross Blue Shield employee assistance program and you get a different person every time. She's in-house. And then we have a cultural and engagement manager that, does things like we just wrapped up a Spirit Week this week. It's our first ever Spirit Week. Every day was something else. It was Jersey Day. There was a Bitmoji Day. There was, Pajama Day. And each of those positions let people know that KDM is still family oriented, right? We care about you outside of the workplace. So we work hard so that we can be able to provide these services to you, but we also play hard, but we only play hard because we work hard. So it's like a yin and yang. Like you have to do both. You can't just do one because the scales become off balance. And
it's one lifestyle, right? Like the working hard is one lifestyle, the playing hard is one life, but they're together, right? And I think they come together. And like we always talk at 12.5 about protecting this lifestyle, because not everybody gets to work here, not everybody gets to work at KDM, and like protecting that and making sure that we work hard enough so that we can keep this beautiful thing we built for a long time into the future. Sounds like you guys are sounds like a lot of companies could learn from you guys in terms of intentionality, and especially in this remote work environment.
We've got a lot of inquiries about how we do what we do. So
yeah. Well, we'll make sure to share that info so that you can get bombarded with more inquiries, because I think you guys are doing an incredible job. I have probably a million other questions, but we're running out of time. So I want to sort of move on to a couple of different things. But for the first thing really, and most important that I said I wanted to dive into was your nonprofit, Calculated Genius. Can you give us the what that is specifically, and then when it started and what spurred that on? Because I think it's super important for people to see that you had success. And along the way, not once you had cashed out and made a bunch of money and all that, but along the way, you've decided to say, no, I'm starting now. I'm not waiting till later. So floor is yours on that.
Absolutely. So here's a quick and dirty on that. So basically, I wanted to be able to give back, and I didn't want to wait until we had made money. We weren't even really making a lot of money. And I was just like, I want to speak to kids. I want them to see, that you can be, whatever you want to be. And I started doing speaking engagements, and I said, I need to capture this somehow. So my now wife and I came up with the idea of the nonprofit. And then we said, all right, cool, we'll just give out money. And I said, all right, I don't want to give out just money, because I used to get scholarships. I can't tell you who I got scholarships from, because it was impactful to help me get out of school with less debt, but I don't know who they were. And I didn't want to be that kind of scholarship.
Right.
So we decided to do other things like programming and mentoring opportunities on top of the scholarships. So we started that in 2016, and it has grown to where it is today, where we've given out almost over $100,000 worth of scholarships to women going into STEM programs, engineering or computer science. We have touched hundreds of Chicago public school kids' lives with our summer program, and with the mentoring and volunteers that we get from some of my clients, colleagues, competitors. It doesn't matter. We all come together when it comes to, reaching out to the youth.
I tell you, I mean, it's inspiring. I've gotten to see what you've done over the many years with that. And in case people are wondering how you make change in the world and how you break cycles of things that you want to break, you're looking at it with Kim here, with you here, because I mean, that's what entrepreneurs and business owners and people need to do. It's not going to be somebody else coming to actually save the day. It's little small things, and you're going to impact, however many people you impact, but that little bit is going to impact underrepresented youth that might not understand what an engineer is. And now all of a sudden, like when you were a kid, so they were exposed to something to go, oh, this is a job that exists. This is something I can do. I have access to this now. Like to me, it's critical. So I'm really pumped for you guys. How many years? That was in 2015. So 6 years now, right?
Yeah, close to that. We officially got a board and everything in 2017, but before that it was, just me going out and speaking. But yeah, so it's been fun.
It's exciting.
That's
exciting. That's awesome. I love it. All right. Well, like I said, I have 15 other questions at this point. I'm not going to get to them. We might have to do a round two of this because we're already round two, 54 minutes in. But you're an inspiration to me. I think you're an inspiration to a lot of kids and folks out there that have seen your growth along the way. I'm sure you hear it all the time, but I feel like I need to say it as a person who's felt like they've sat a far sidecar to be able to watch this growth happen. So thanks for doing that. I want to get to our final questions, the fast four, I call them. And so these are like, you don't have to answer or give any explanation unless you want to these questions. So, other than what you're doing right now, and this doesn't mean you'll actually do this. This means what you, in your brain, what you would love to do. Other than what you're doing right now, what other profession or business would you like to take a stab at?
Day trading.
Day trading. Love it. Love it. I kind of feel the same way. What is something you're terrible at?
Exuding patience.
Terrible at having patience for others?
Having patience for others that, it's like, that is not something that God gifted me. And I really have to work hard every day to do that.
I feel the same. I think this is why we're such good friends. I feel like I see myself just a mirror back and forth. What book or documentary are you reading or watching right now or have read recently? And that's a selfish question because I want to add to my book list.
Traction. Have you read the book Traction?
Oh yeah.
So I'm rereading that now, but I'm having my staff read it as well.
Beautiful. For those that don't know Traction that are listening to it, it's called The Entrepreneur's Operating System. It's by Gino Wickman. It's called Traction. We actually implemented that probably 7 or 8 years ago in our business. So it is kind of how we run our business. I think it's a very simple and simple to understand method for operating a business. So if you have a great business idea and you think, boy, I would love to do this, buy this book and apply whatever principles from this book towards your business, and you'll have a good shot at it. So I'll add those to the show notes. All right. And if you need to look at your phone, you can. But what's the last thing you listened to on Spotify or Apple Music?
Kendrick Lamar's album that just came out. That was the last thing I listened to.
Oh, is it good?
It's pretty good.
I haven't listened yet.
It's pretty good.
It's pretty good. I mean, it can't be bad coming from him, you know.
So
can't be bad.
I'll do one last selfish plug, and I will hopefully invite you to my new restaurant that opens in a couple weeks.
Oh, come on. I was just going to ask you, thanks for spending time with us today. Where can people find you online and get in touch? So you have a restaurant opening where? So
in the annex part of the building that I've moved to across from Morton Salt Plant in the Salt District, I have a restaurant. So they can find us online at KDMEngineering.com, 1308chicago.com, calculatedgenius.org.
.org. Beautiful. We'll put that all in the show notes. You share me the link of the restaurant too, and I'll obviously come and dine there, but I'll put that in the show notes as well. Thanks for spending some time with us today. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.